There's also something else. God is a God of order, right? Check this out. When we consider all the appointed times, some people call them feast days, when we consider all of these, Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, Pentecost, trumpets, Day of Atonement, tabernacles, we can clearly see that there was an order when God first made them. Jesus also followed this order. We understand that Passover, this all happened at his first coming, right? Passover was his death. Unleavened bread was his burial. First fruits, that was when he rose. He has become the first fruits of those that raised from the dead. That's what the Bible says. And then we see that happened in order. Then we see Pentecost, 50 days later. He was in heaven at this time. And the Bible tells us in Revelation chapter 21, verse 3, that we are going to tabernacle with God when the new heavens and new earth happens. So now, what about trumpets and Day of Atonement?
We can recognize that the antitypical Day of Atonement was the actual day of the crucifixion, not some huge gap from the sacrifice taking place and then a decades-long process beginning in 1813 years later. Just like on the typical Day of Atonement in Leviticus, the antitypical Day of Atonement was also a single day where Jesus functioned as the high priest, offering up himself as the ultimate fulfillment of all of the law's sacrifices and offerings, with the penalty for sin paid, the sin removed, and Jesus declaring it is finished. End of story.
For some reason, when you say at the cross, Jesus both died and took away sin, so therefore he's both goats. How does that make sense?
Truth is logical. Error is confusion. Error is Babylon.
If Jesus is going in order in all of these events, Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, he went in order. Pentecost came next. We understand tabernacles is coming at the end of time. Shouldn't we expect the Day of Atonement to come just before the tabernacles? This is what Oregon said, one of the people that your friend likes to quote. The Day of Atonement remains for us until the sun sets. That is, until the world comes to an end. Oregon believed that the true Day of Atonement was going to happen before the second coming, right at the end of time.
We can recognize that the antitypical Day of Atonement was the actual day of the crucifixion, not some huge gap from the sacrifice taking place and then a decades-long process beginning in 1813 years later.
How does that make sense?
Truth is logical. Error is confusion. Error is Babylon.
Let's talk about this real quick. Jesus died. He's the first goat. The high priest takes the blood into the most holy place. This is what happens on the Day of Atonement. Jesus went into the most holy place with his own blood. Jesus comes out. The high priest comes out of the most holy place, grabs the scapegoat. Are you telling me Jesus is going to come out of the most holy place and grab himself? Because he's a scapegoat? He's going to grab himself? It says he was sent to the wilderness by the hand of a fit man. Jesus is going to have somebody grab him and put him in the wilderness where everything is burnt up.
Can I comment on that?
And then the Day of Atonement ends with the Feast of Tabernacles coming next. It doesn't make sense.
Truth is logical. Error is confusion. Error is Babylon.
I'm just a systematic thinker. I want to know, am I thinking things that contradict one another? Am I believing things that if I believe this over here, does that cause me problems over here? Type thing. Yeah. And that's how theology is. We can recognize that the antitypical Day of Atonement was the actual day of the crucifixion, not some huge gap from the sacrifice taking place and then a decades-long process beginning in 1813 years later.
The view that the Feast of Trumpets, Day of Atonement, and Tabernacles are yet future is not a uniquely Adventist thing. How many of you are familiar with the webpage Got Questions? Many Bible scholars and commentators believe that these fall feasts have not yet been fulfilled by Jesus. But the point is, they are saying these were not fulfilled at the cross. Why aren't they like, oh, all the feasts were fulfilled when Jesus died? Because that's not a biblical position.
I'm just a systematic thinker. You know, I want to know, am I thinking things that contradict one another? Am I believing things that if I believe this over here, does that cause me problems over here?
Everybody universally believes that the Feast of Tabernacles represents when the tabernacle of God is with man forever. So chronology, skip that one. Let's make that one the cross, and then the last one chronological. The only way I could see someone hanging tenaciously to that is if they had something that they wanted to disprove. Because otherwise, it makes no sense. If you're not thinking about Adventists, you would have no problem with what these other guys said about, oh, the first 4 feasts were fulfilled here, and the last 3 will be fulfilled sometime around Jesus' second coming. You would have no problem, except you're like, oh, wait a minute, the Adventists believe that too, so no, it is wrong.
Because we can recognize that the antitypical Day of Atonement was the actual day of the crucifixion, not some huge gap from the sacrifice taking place and then a decades-long process beginning in 1813 years later.
When you say at the cross, Jesus both died and took away sin, so therefore he's both goats, how does that make sense?
Truth is logical. Error is, yeah, this is not the cross. Yeah, this is not the cross. Yeah, that's not the cross. Yeah, but that's the cross. We're going to go back. That's the cross. And then the one after that, yeah, that's not the cross. Truth is logical. Error is confusion. Error is Babylon. Babylon all day. So we could either do Bible all day or Babylon all day. Which will it be? You cannot hate a group of people so much that you throw logic out the window and just make it that whatever they say, they got to be lying, because it just can't be true. There's just no way it can be true.